All right, we've got a bunch of changes that have happened in the world of cross-border shipping in the last little bit. We're recording this on October 1st, so we're about a month past a bunch of very meaningful changes that have happened in the cross-border and the e-commerce industry, specifically the removal of Section 321 and any of the de minimis programs that allowed you to ship goods into the US. And so it's very important timing, a lot of questions, a lot of people not really sure how to proceed. And so today's a really good opportunity to just get some information out and sort of answer some of the questions that we've been asked quite a bit over the last couple of weeks as we've adjusted our processes and the solutions that we have in place to help customers get products from Canada into the US. And so a ways I'll start there. You're a Canadian merchant. You work with a lot of other Canadian merchants. Everything's changed since August 29th. So describe it for people. What's changed and what's the best way for them to get packages into the US now using ShipSavvy?
Yeah, so you're right. Section 321 was removed on August 29th, and that's a big shift for anybody shipping to the US. What that means is there was a de minimis of around $800 that allowed shippers to ship to the US without brokerage requirements, without any duties on the goods. That was removed for Chinese goods earlier in the year, around May, and August 29th, that exemption went away for the entire world, right? So it doesn't matter where you're shipping from. Now there is no de minimis where you can ship informally without paying duties on the goods as well as, faster clearance. So it's become very difficult for anyone to send shipments to the US. The compliance requirements are now extensive and most sellers are struggling with it. And the compliance requirements are similar to if you are shipping large quantities, if you're shipping inventory, if you're shipping, containers into the US, which is very different than shipping small parcels when you're an e-commerce business and you have lots of customers that you're sending shipments to, but the requirements have become the same. So this is a very difficult time for our sellers to figure out how can they still continue to fulfill their goods into the US. But at ShipSavvy, we've been working directly with brokers to set up proper solutions for our customers, whether it is their regular shipments to their final customers, or whether it's shipments to the FBA warehouses, or whether it's inventory, so they can still move their goods. And right now, we are facilitating these shipments into the US, and we help the customers throughout the process end to end, whether that means getting set up with their own importer of record or using one of the partner IORs. We can manage the custom clearances on behalf of our customers. And there's different approaches. We'd more than happy to sit down with our customers and explain to them their options, but we have been able to facilitate these shipments into the US for all different kinds of businesses. So there are solutions out there, and the processes are getting better and more streamlined over time. So that's the good news, but it is a very challenging time because there's still duties on it and there's still additional costs to ship these goods.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, I think, for a lot of merchants now is that even if you're a small merchant or you're shipping smaller goods, you're really forced to sort of go through the exact same compliance and regulations as somebody shipping large volumes of things, right? I think that's an important distinction is that before this change, things were fairly automated. You could get parcels across the border, pretty straightforward. Informally even was the terminology, right? And now everything has to be formal to some degree, right? And thankfully, because we have Savvy Broker, a new product that we've taken to market, which essentially just means that you work with Savvy Broker and behind the scenes, based on your specific use cases and HTS tariff categories and country manufacturer, will help you get that stuff across. Doesn't matter whether it's going to be type 1 or type 11 or any type of other clearance that needs to happen in the future. We'll help you get that sort of stuff automated and ultimately get that stuff across the border. So it's awesome. You run a number of your own e-commerce businesses. So you've got your own sales that you're worried about and things that you're thinking about. So how are you thinking about getting inventory into the US this holiday season, both for, big channels like Amazon as well as any of the smaller channels that people might be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me talk about getting shipments into Amazon first, because that's That's big, especially you have to be planning in advance for that, and because there are cutoffs that we need to meet, right? So in my own business, we never rely on a single shipment. We break inventory into waves. And the first wave goes early to make sure that we are covered and live well ahead of the cutoff. And Amazon has these different cutoffs where there's a different cutoff for Halloween, then for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and then for Christmas shopping as well, right? So we do it in waves. The second wave is staged closer to, let's say, Black Friday. So the stock is more fresh and we are avoiding extra inventory costs by sending them too early. And at the same time, we don't risk being wiped out by early demand. And sometimes we do a third replenishment in December just to carry through the holiday rush, right? This way, even if Amazon check-ins are slow, are there any delays in transportation? And at that time of the year, everybody it's peak season for all the shipping carriers as well. So there are a lot of delays. So by having these waves, we make sure that we're not out of stock. It's a risk management strategy by spreading shipments across multiple points, but we make sure that our customers can find us when they need our products. That's on the FBA side. When you're shipping directly to your customers, again, it's all about planning. It's about looking at what are the timelines required to get the products delivered to them on time, especially when it comes to Christmas shopping, because people will have a deadline. They need their gifts on time. So we just have to make sure that we plan for the carrier cutoffs. Every carrier has a cutoff to make sure that they get delivered on time. So we plan around that. We plan around any kind of extreme cases. It's winter, there could be winter storms. So just planning and giving yourself time is the key to success when running an e-commerce business in this busy period.
Yeah, you brought up a good point there. So there's almost like a few cutoffs that people need to really worry about, right? There's the actual cutoffs, for FBA to accept stuff in to get it there. Carriers have their own cutoffs that they would publish. But even outside of that, there's volume restrictions sometimes that can come into play, right? And so even if you're before the cutoff, if you didn't commit to that volume or forecast that volume and you have a significant spike, you might be struggling to find arrangements for that sort of thing, right?
Agreed. Yes. It's very important to work with the carriers that the sellers are partnered up with. And we do that on the ShipSavvy side. We plan ahead. We talk to our carriers. And Kane, as you said, there are some restrictions. There are some volume restrictions that they put in. We obviously try to work with them, but I recommend every seller to really work with the carriers and make sure that they have capacity and some backup in case their volume is higher and one single carrier cannot handle. And again, by at ShipSavvy, because we deal with so many different carriers, we have the option of maneuvering different carriers and making sure we are dealing with the right carrier at the right time. If one is backlogged, move on to this next one, just to make sure that the shipments get there on time. And I recommend all sellers to be thinking like that and having, working with multiple carriers and having some backups.
Yeah, if we've learned anything really over the last kind of 5 years in the e-commerce space, whether it's weather, snowstorms, delaying things, or strikes, union strikes, or any number of these things, there's a lot of things out of our control. So having a second and third option of carriers is wise for sure. Okay, let's switch gears into marketplace specific stuff. So some marketplaces require you to use their own shipping labels. I believe Whatnot and maybe eBay and Etsy and some of those ones kind of have these unique requirements. Explain to people, how does ShipSavvy handle these and how can they help those channels?
Yeah, so there are channels where you are required to use their labels, or it's actually advantageous for you for the customers to use their labels. FBA is a perfect example. They give their labels. There are benefits to using their labels, and it is actually in a lot of cases a lower cost as well. And similar to that, there are other channels that almost force you to use their labels, like eBay and Whatnot. The pricing may work in your favor or not, but if you're selling on those channels, you have to kind of abide by their rules and get the labels from them. And so ShipSavvy can handle the shipment for our customers. We then only take care of the middle mile, where we take it from Toronto to the Buffalo area and give it to the carriers that these marketplaces are working with, right? And so we take care of all the details, how we can handle the clearance for our customers, but still the customers are able to use their own labels or the marketplace labels to facilitate the shipments. This way they get the best of both worlds. They meet their requirements, they can take advantage of the benefits that the Amazon labels, for example, give or the FBA labels have, while still being able to fulfill those shipments into the US.
Yeah, I'd imagine it would be common for merchants to have to deal with both scenarios, right? Marketplace sales where you're required to use their labels or it's advantageous to use their labels, but also just give me the best rates to be able to fulfill these orders, right? So we've built in the flexibility so that you can handle both scenarios and just ultimately meet the requirements of each marketplace.
Yeah, and that's what we recommend. Take a look at each shipment by shipment, see where it's advantageous to use the marketplace ones and where it's better to use our discounted rates and, utilize the opportunities that are in front of them. We'll help our customers get those shipments across the border.
Absolutely. Some advice for our friends and our clients. What do you see as the biggest mistakes some merchants make when planning for Q4?
The biggest mistake I see sellers make every year is misplanning for dates, right? Amazon has quite strict FBA cutoff dates for each major holiday. Again, whether it's Halloween, Black Friday, or Christmas, they have separate cutoffs. And if you miss those dates, your inventory may not be available when customers are searching. And even if you're not using FBA, you still need to pay attention to the carrier deadlines and the fact that volume across all the supply chain explodes in the last quarter, right? Delays are common. There's things that are outside, the control of the sellers, like weather or just strikes, as we were talking about. Delays are very common, and you have to work around those deadlines. And so sellers who leave planning to the last minute often find their products are stuck in transit or sitting at the fulfillment centers when competitors are actually selling, right? So planning dates early is really the foundation of success during this peak season.
And then you touched on this a little bit, but what's really at risk if they miss these dates from a pure, inventory and sales opportunity perspective?
Yeah, if they miss the dates, then there's no guarantee that those products will be available for sale or will be available on the marketplace on those holidays, right? And thinking from the other perspective, there is a peak. This is the peak season. There, the fulfillment centers are receiving a lot of shipments. Again, more shipments than usual. So if they usually turn around the processing within a day or two, this could now delay turnaround, could take a week or 2 weeks. And so they set cutoffs to give themselves enough time that by if you send the goods by that cutoff, it will be available for sale on those holidays, right? So it doesn't mean that if you miss the cutoffs that your products will not be available, but there is a likelihood because they're also delayed, they're also backlogged, and your product will not be the first priority. The priority will be to make sure the ones that met the cutoff are available and listed. So it is a risk. It is a big risk that could make or break the holiday season. So I really recommend people to be very careful about those deadlines and try to meet them as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think the expectations have raised year over year for what those deadlines are. There was some flexibility years ago in some of these things, but customers demand more. The carriers have to fulfill that promise, so they have to be tighter on those things. The warehouses have to ship on time to meet those things. It's increasingly becoming more and more controlled to be able to hit those deadlines. I mean, ultimately, that's how customers get this stuff in 2 days and 3 days and hit those prime promises, right?
Exactly.
Talk to me about apparel. Sometimes apparel has earlier cutoffs in some cases, so why should people be concerned about that?
Yeah, Amazon sets their apparel deadlines usually earlier than most other categories. And I believe that's because clothing takes longer to process through their fulfillment network, right? Apparel often requires extra prep work like polybagging, labels, and some of their inspections. So it tends to move slower inside the fulfillment centers compared to other categories like toys or electronics. And because a lot of apparel is seasonal, think winter jackets or holiday outfits, Amazon wants to make sure that confirm to sellers that those products are in place and available for sale on those busy days, right? So that's why they set earlier deadlines for apparel. And again, it's very important for sellers to try to meet those deadlines.
Yeah, again, those deadlines starting to stack and stack and stack, right? So pay attention to the Amazon deadlines, but also the sub deadlines within those deadlines, I guess. Okay. What deadlines do you recommend merchants optimize for going into Q4?
I would focus on the big three. There's the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Christmas cutoffs. There's also the Halloween one. but the biggest three are the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Christmas, right? So Black Friday and Cyber Monday are critical because those are the busiest days of shopping throughout the year. And customer demand spikes, and so the sellers who are ready to capture the momentum, they can carry that through December, right? So, and what that means is that if you have the momentum, you have more reviews, you have more rankings, you're up higher on the rankings. And so that momentum is super important to go into December. And then plan separately around Christmas cutoffs because there are so many customers that are buying gifts right up until the last possible shipping date. So there's it's important to make sure that you have inventory going into the fulfillment centers up until the end, so then you're not out of stock before Christmas, right? So again, depending on the products, if those products are more targeted towards Halloween or Thanksgiving, then you have to plan accordingly. But the most three biggest ones that I would recommend would be the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Christmas.
And do you see anybody optimizing for around Prime Day? Is that becoming a big enough event? Kind of around this time of year, right? Or the prime days. Is that on your radar in any way, shape, or form?
Yes. Now the challenge is there's so many of them, right? There's a Prime Day in July, there's a Prime Day in October, and then there's also Halloween coming right after, and then a Black Friday. So you do have to look at your inventory and your category and see where that fits the best. But Prime Days are big. They do bring a lot of traffic, and again, it's the momentum, right? So it's right before the holiday season, right before Halloween and the holiday season. So if you prepare well for the Prime Day coming up in October, then you can start that momentum early on, and hopefully that will help you throughout the rest of the quarter. So it is an important day, and again, it has its own separate cutoffs. It is not the biggest ones for shopping or for most sellers as compared to the other three big days that are coming later on in the year, but it is an important one to try to capitalize on.
Awesome. And so we covered a lot. I think that's probably where we'll wrap it up for today. If anybody has additional questions, or this is a very complicated area, right? And so sometimes some specifics and some back and forth. Can they reach out? How would you like to give some advice?
Yeah, definitely. We here at ShipSavvy are working with sellers all year long on different challenges, right? And especially when it comes to their fulfillment needs and how to get their products into fulfillment centers and how to plan their shipping with different carriers. So we are always happy to talk to customers and sellers and share our experience and share what other customers are doing and what the industry is doing. So please feel free to reach out to our customer service at any point, and we will make sure that someone connects with you and tries to help you with your journey.
Yeah, and if we can be of any help, ourselves personally, we get on calls with customers, often. So yeah, if it sounds like anything that we've talked about kind of resonates, let us know. We'd be happy to reach out. So we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.